Well, come on in. Boy, I feel kind of surrounded by women. I better be really nice today. How's you all doing? Good?
Good.
All right, so let me make sure you all get one of these little handouts. And there's a couple of questions in there. You get a moment to answer those questions. You
Yes.
need more time? You good? Okay. So let's go over some of these two questions that I ask you to go think about it. Put this up here now. So what do you hope to get out of this workshop, guys? What do you want to take away with you? Is there any specific question that you've been thinking about probate real estate? Anything specific?
Just more about what it is and how do you get it.
Okay, so what is it?
The market.
How'd you get it? How do you prospect with it? How to make money with it, I hope. Okay, is any of you guys have done any probate transactions in the past? One, so most of you guys is a brand new niche. Okay, so I'll make sure that I'm not touching the main points of the whole. What I'm going to do today, I'm going to give you a global perspective of how probate real estate works. So now you walk away saying, okay, this is something that I want to implement into my current business, or that's something that you're not interested in, but you walk away with some really good, solid information. What is the biggest challenge you guys are having in the real estate market today?
Lots of competition.
Yeah, oh my gosh, the market is picked up quite a bit, so it's very competitive. I've heard inventory is really low. Is that the same issue around the San Antonio area? Inventory is low. Investors are looking for fixers a lot, to just finding those opportunities. And one of the things that you're going to discover is that in this niche market, it brings a lot of those type of homes, because the person has lived in the house for the last 25 years, and you and I know that towards the end of our lives, physically it's really hard to keep up with the property. So many of these homes, they need a lot of work. So that creates the opportunity for your investor clients. Is there any other specific thing that you're looking for that I can address before I start? So all the stuff that we're talking about is on my PowerPoint. You'll learn about it. But is there anything else? I want to make sure that I cover what you guys are looking for. Yeah.
I want to better understand what do you mean by probate real estate system?
Okay, so you understand that probate is a process when a person passes away. So what we did is we built a system. We're the only nationwide company that has a certification in probate real estate for the real estate profession. We're right now in about 27, we're going to be in 32 states this year. So this system that we built is basically designed for you to apply to prospect, to get listings. Because in our business, whoever controls the listing controls the money, agree? So that's the system that we built. It has marketing, it has the scripts, it has handouts, the whole thing. So that's what we built over the last, and over 7,000 people are using it across the country. You think 7,000 people seems like a lot of bodies, but in reality it's not, because it's all over the country. So it's kind of a hidden, I call it a shadow market. And now, because you notice that all the attention is being drifted towards the seniors. They're doing a lot of senior studies. AARP is really on the wagon in this thing. They're looking at nursing homes, assisted living communities. That is a booming industry. It's because right now, the largest living generation is the elderly. And the fact of the matter is the elderly controls about 75% of the wealth in this country. They're very, very wealthy people. And I talk about this in a couple of slides, but that's what we built. That's what system is. Anything else before I start? Good, ready? All right, so here we go. I'm gonna start with a quick little video. And this video really illustrates it's a story of this couple. Okay, this one works. It's a story of this couple who were doing estate planning. Let me play it for you.
Mike and Molly, a married couple, were sitting down having a conversation about what they would do if something were to happen to them, and they realized they needed legal advice. They visited an attorney, and the attorney advised them that they have two choices to prepare their estate. They could set up a living trust, or they could write a will. After explaining these options, Mike and Molly thanked him for his services and promised to get back to him. Unfortunately, a few months later, Mike had a car accident and didn't make it. Molly found herself devastated by the loss of her husband. she called the attorney and began to ask for advice on what to do next. The attorney explained to her that because Mike didn't have a living trust, they would have to file all the paperwork with the probate court. Molly decided to hire the attorney to represent her in this process. The attorney visits the courthouse to file the paperwork and begin the probate process. Molly was looking over all the debt that had to be paid, such as credit cards, mortgages, car payments, funeral expenses, hospital bills, attorney fees, and all the other fees in the process of settling someone's estate. She realized that luckily there are some assets in the estate, but she'd have to decide whether to keep them or sell them so that she'd be able to pay all the debt. Molly decided to sell the house and began looking for someone that could help her list the property for sale in the process. She goes on to usprobateservices.org and finds Jonathan, a certified probate real estate specialist that could help her list the property. Jonathan then visits Molly and explains to her the process of how he's going to help her sell the house. Jonathan did such a wonderful job that a buyer was found in a few weeks after the property was listed. The property sold, and Molly was able to obtain all the funds needed to settle the debts that belonged to her husband's estate. Molly was able to settle the estate eventually, and now she and her family are moving on with their lives.
So there is kind of a joke in our office that Molly looks too happy with all the cash in her hands. So basically, that little quick 2-minute cartoon tells a story. So if someone does not have estate planning and they die without wills, they have to settle the estate through the probate courts. If they have a will, they have to settle the estate through the probate courts. The only way they can avoid probate is if they have a fully vested living trust. You all familiar with a living trust? So basically, an attorney sets the paperwork, and the owner of the trust will transfer all of the assets into the trust, including the house. And if something were to happen to them and they passed away in the journey, now that trust gets settled at the attorney's office and avoids the whole thing. One of the things that I always tell people is, remember, a trust may cost between $1,500 to $2,000. But I guarantee you, the settlement estate through the probate courts, it will cost more than $2,000. It could be on the thousands. For example, one lady, Marilyn Monroe, her estate they spent over 75% of her estate settling the whole probate process. Right now, Michael Jackson, he died almost 9 years ago, and his estate is still going through the probate court in the LA County area. Imagine how much money they have spent on that. So probate is a very expensive journey. The best way to do it is to have a living trust so you can avoid that and you leave all your assets to your loved ones and avoid a lot of headaches for them. Okay? A little bit about myself. I'm one of the co-founders of MTI Education. You notice that we're in Houston, Dallas, and San Antonio today. Well, there's only one Mike. So I told my wife and I said, I want to go to San Antonio. I've never been out there. So I got here yesterday in the afternoon and kind of drove around. It's a pretty cool city you guys have. I didn't have a chance to go to it's called the river or something. I heard that it's really beautiful out there. So I don't know if I'll be able to make it before I have to hop on the plane tonight at 8 o'clock, so we'll see. But it's a really nice town you guys have. I really like it. And you get, I get to interact with you. So there's only one mic and I'm happy to be here today, so it's kind of cool to be with you guys. My background is in education and investments. I've been investing for the last 20 years. I was a teacher for the Long Beach Unified School District for 13 years, so you're in good hands. I've done this before. And we're gonna have some fun. I'm gonna teach you a lot of stuff. So take some good notes. And if you have a question, stop me. Just ask me the question so you can learn. My goal is for you to be empowered today and walk out with some really good knowledge, okay? So let me start with some basic terms that I'm gonna be using back and forth. One of them is called probate. By definition, probate is the judicial process to determine if a will is authentic or to determine heirs under the law where no will exists. The process also resolves debts and taxes of the deceased person as well as a dispute between heirs. There's two things you cannot avoid in this country when you die: death and taxes. So taxes always have to be settled. So if you have a tax liability, you gotta have money, right? Keep that in your mind, because some of the states, they don't have enough money to settle the taxes. All they have is assets. And what's the most valuable asset to any estate? The house. So the majority of these people have to sell the house to have the liquidity to take care of the debts, okay? Now, the other term is called estate. Consists of all the property, real and personal, that a person owns or controls. And personal representative is the person appointed to handle the administration of the estate. Now, personal representative is a basic term that is used between judges and attorneys. Have you heard of the PR, the term PR? Personal representative. You probably heard executor or administrator. Okay, those are kind of the terms that they're using. But in the courthouse, when they're saying in the courtroom, the judge will say, who's the PR? That means the personal representative. That's really what it means. Would you guys agree with me that real estate is one of the best vehicles to create wealth in this country? It is phenomenal. I love it. I've used it most of my life. And that's how I was able to provide for my family and, of course, have a little savings for the future. Now, here's some of the challenge in our business. 9% of realtors write about 10% of the sales. That's an average of 3 to 4 months per year. And about 1% of realtors write about 90% of the sales. Would you agree with those stats? That's really what our business is all about. So you're looking at this blue area, what does that really represent? So if this is what they're consuming in terms of business, what does this mean to you? Opportunity. That's how much opportunity is out there. But we only sometimes, and I'm guilty of it, we focus into one thing. And we forget that there's so many other opportunities outside this box. Probate is one of them. Have you heard of divorce files? Let me give you a little tip. If you're at the courthouse pulling probate leads, while you're there, go to the divorce counter and pull divorce leads. 50% of Americans get divorced. And what is the number one thing they need to liquidate when they're divorcing? The house. Any divorce members besides you? You know, that's the first thing you gotta do. Liquidate the house. And so there's another niche within the courthouse that you guys can tap into. So there's more listing opportunities today than ever before. All we have to do is kind of align ourselves with where is that opportunity, where are they? So probate is one of those niches that I'm going to share with you today. Now, here's some of the challenges that I hear as I travel throughout the country. I mean, I go from the west to the east, and these are the 5 common challenges that many realtors have. One of them, they say, is difficult to locate a qualified listing opportunity. There is no unique selling proposition to differentiate yourself from the crowd. We need access to the tools creating today's new top producers. Difficult to be located by a seller due to the high competition in the marketplace, very competitive. And the last one, they said the real estate market is totally unpredictable. I did a little bit of research and I found this chart, and it really makes the point. The real estate market is all over the place. One day is stable, the next day is down. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen in the next 6 months, right? So probate real estate is the answer. Let me explain to you why. We are in the life, in the cycle of life. We're all going to eventually pass on. So that's a very predictable market. Now, when a person passes away, they have to file one document. Write this down. It's called petition for probate. That is your leave. So when you go to the courthouse and you're looking for those files, when you open the file, the first thing you're looking for is called petition for probate. And that document will have everything you need. That is your leave. So now, the person passes away, they file the paperwork, that automatically becomes a qualified leave. Because we know that in the process, things are going to be liquidated. And one of the things, I would say 93 or 95% of the time, the house gets sold. Either at the beginning of the process, middle, or after the probate is closed. But that real estate eventually gets liquidated and gets sold. So now, let's say that I, as a PR, I'm going to be in charge of the estate, and I have outstanding debt. Give me some common debts. Credit person. Credit cards. What else? Cars, vehicles. What else? Hospital bills, funeral bills. What about mortgages? What about property taxes? So all those things are just everyday expenses that we have. Now, I, as a personal representative in charge of the estate, have to take care of all those bills. So if I don't have enough money, but I have an asset, sometimes, many times actually, the court will issue an order saying, you, Mr. PR, have to liquidate the house to be able to settle this outstanding debt. Is this making sense? So when you have an outstanding debt and the court is saying you have to sell the house, what is your opportunity? What do you have in your hands? A listing. Exactly. And that happens all over the country, everywhere. What you're learning today, you can literally relocate to another state and apply the same principles because this is everywhere. Now, the best part of this niche market is that it's connected to the life cycle. So when will this niche ever end? Never. You can take this vehicle, put it into your current real estate business, use it until the day you retire, because there's always going to be business in the courthouse. Make sense? Now, let me share with you where this niche is heading. And this is all based on research, okay? So here's a study. This is by The Aging of America, The Evolution of the Aging Population by Jennifer M. Brock. And she writes, according to George Moshes, director of Georgia State Center for Mature Consumer Studies, the 55-plus age group controls more than 3/4 of this country's wealth, and the 65-plus group has twice as much per capita income as the average baby boomer. So what she's saying is that 75% of the wealth in America is controlled by the seniors. Now let's go to another study. This is by the Center for Mature Consumer Studies and the Roper Organization for Modern Maturity magazine. They write, someone turns 50 years of age every 6 seconds. The over 85 age group is the fastest growing segment of the population. By 2020, we're talking about 3 years from now, the senior population will number approximately 115 million people. Let me ask you a question. Based on the census, the last study they did, how many people live in America approximately? About 310 million. 310 to 320. So they say, based on this study, they say that by 2020, 1/3 of the population in this country will be senior status. How many people are those? It's a lot of people. Do people live longer? Yes. It's kind of funny. When I was in my 30s, you never walk into a Walmart and see a happy 90th birthday. Today, we walk into Walmart and happy 90th. I seen a happy 100. That is like, wow. And I'm hoping I'm on the same journey. I want to stick around for a long time. But it's amazing how people are living longer. Now, let's put this in perspective. If people are living longer, what's happening to their cash? It's disappearing because they're living longer. So look at this. Today, the senior population has approximately $900 billion in spending money. But by the time they reach the time for them to pass on, all the money will be spent. So what happens if all the money, all the cash is gone, and now I'm in charge of settling the estate, and I have to pay taxes, and there's no cash. Are you beginning to connect the dots here? So I have to liquidate something. And the first thing they liquidate, which is the most valuable asset, is the house. That's why this niche market is such a powerful market. Now, all of us are in sales. That's what we do for a living. That's what we breathe and eat every day. But it's sweeter when you turn around and you help somebody sell something and you know that you did something really cool. And they'll come back and give you hugs and thank you so much for helping me. If you like that feeling, this niche you're gonna love because you're truly helping people. These are people that are just going through a lot of emotional, a lot of heartache. So it's really cool to connect with them and say, hey, let me help you out, let me show you. It's okay, don't worry about the real estate piece of it. Let me handle that part. Let the attorney handle the legal side of it. And between all of us, we'll move you forward. So it's a really cool from that perspective. Now the next point, nearly a quarter of householders aged 65 to 69 have a net worth of $250,000 or more. Now here's another study. This is by statesettlement.com. And they write approximately $17 trillion in inheritance will pass through the probate and estate settlement by 2022. Over 2 million adults die each year in the United States. So the question is, when we read $17 trillion in inheritance, are we talking about cash, stocks, bonds? What are we talking about? What's the bulk of it? Homes. Homes. Probably 90% of that is going to be real estate. So what do you think is going to happen to all these homes over time? They're going to go back into the housing market. So it will be a shift of inventory going from one generation to the next one. And that is happening right now. And that's where you are. You guys are right now kind of at the beginning of this long curve. Real estate is a cycle, right? This real estate cycle will last between 15 to 20 years. There'll be plenty of business. And as time goes by, it gets better and better because people are moving on. So the inventory is growing and growing and growing. Let me give you an example. Broward County in Florida. You're going to be stunned when you hear this. Broward County, Florida gets 1,000 files per week. Per week. 1,000 files. Because Florida is the #1 retirees community. Followed by Nevada. Texas, a lot of people are retiring here in Texas. So this niche is just growing and growing and growing. Okay? Now here's another study. This is by ProbateData.com. Probate Data is a company that collects probate leads throughout the country. They don't have the entire country. They have about 18, 20 states. So based on the data collection, they concluded that 70% of probate real estate is free and clear, and 18% is commercial. So when you're thinking about probate as a vehicle for your business, and you're focusing on single-family residence, plenty of business. You're focusing into commercial, I want to deal with buildings, businesses, you'll find it. Because anything that a person owns has to be disclosed at time of death. So plenty of inventory there. Now, let's start with this. Let me show you. This is a house that's going through the probate process. So let me teach you how you get this. The first thing you need to have in order to pull the lead is the name of a person or a case number. If you have a name of a person or a case number, you can pull that information from the probate court. How do you find my local probate court? Now with Google, you can't find anything. Go to Google and you type, what county am I on right now?
Okay.
Bexar County. Bexar County Probate Court. And it's going to give you the website, address, business hours, everything. So now you found your probate court in your local county. You go to the county, you go to the courthouse, and the person is going to ask you, do you know the name of the deceased? Always say yes, because that's what I use. Let me teach you what I do. I can go anywhere in America and say, oh yeah, the person's name is James Smith. How many James Smith are there? Millions of it, right? So they say, well, do you know the middle initial? No, I don't. Do you have a computer? They say, yeah, the computer is in that corner. So I go to the computer, I type James Smith, and dozens will come up. All I need is a case number, right? So I pick any case number from the list, and now I'm in the system. Let's say the case number, for instance, is 160292. So what is the next case? I'm in the system. Now I go 3, 4, 5, and I just continue moving on. So now I can pull hundreds and hundreds of leads. That's how you do this.
But you have to go there?
You have, okay, yes and no. Very few counties will give you access to this information online on the regular internet. The majority of them, they like to keep it in-house through their intranet, which means you have to physically go to the courthouse and pull that information. And the reason why they don't give you access to it in the internet is because monetary reasons. If I give you the information and you don't have to pay for it, how am I going to sustain it? So they want you to pay, and it's usually between 50 cents to $1 a page. Now, if you go into the courthouse, don't spend any money. Take a notepad and write down this information. Ask permission, you can take a picture of the screen. Take your phone in, click on it. So now you have that information. Now, once you have the case number, you pull, what's the name of the document that I shared at the beginning? What's the name of the document?
Petition for probate.
You look for the petition for probate, you pull that, and now you're going to find attorney's information, deceased person's name, who's going to be the personal representative, and in some cases, they'll give you the address of the deceased person. So now you know there's real estate. In other cases, they tell you there's real estate in it. How would you like to have a lead like that every single day? And how much does it cost to go to the courthouse? Last time I went to the courthouse, it didn't cost me anything. It was free. I had to pay for parking. Now in LA, I checked, that's where I'm from, it's $25 per day. So I go in for one, I go on Wednesdays, which is kind of slow, and I sit there for hours, and then I leave. But you don't have to go to the courthouse every day. Go to the courthouse once a week and find those things. Okay? So once you have the case number, you can pull that information. You do a little bit of research to your property, your tax records, do some title search, and now you identify the property is located. Here's some inventory. So this is from Nevada. These are all probate homes. This is from Florida. This one is from Indiana. This one is from Deer Park, Texas.
Good question, Mike.
Yes.
Is there a way on that, when you're looking at it, that you can determine that for sure they own a home?
Great question. I've been doing this for over 25 years. I found cases, actually more, quite a handful of them, where they say there's no real estate, but later on, they found a piece of property. So when they file for the petition, they make sure there's no real estate in it, but later on the real estate will appear. So when I look at a probate deed, this is personally me, I always assume there's real estate until I verbally confirm with the personal representative that there's no real estate in it.
But is there something on the records that you're looking at that would say that?
It will tell you in some cases. I'm going to show you an actual case from Texas. You'll see in a minute. And you will go through the whole case. So in Texas, they'll tell you there's real estate. Okay? Is this all making sense, guys? Cool. Now, here's your average probate house. The person living in it for the last 20, 25 years, towards the end, it's just it's too challenging for them to keep up. So if you see a property in this condition, who's the ideal buyer? We all know. And investors have cash. And here in Texas, there's plenty of cash going around. So there's money is just overflowing. It's just the inventory. Now, an investor purchased this, they fix it up, it's called flipping, they put it back in the market, and they make the money. And you can do this anywhere in the United States. Now, some of you guys are investors. Any investors in the room here? Okay. So here's an example of what you can do as a broker, as a realtor investor / investor. Because I know you guys, some of you guys do this. Like in this case, Terrell went to the courthouse, pulled the lead, pulled the petition for probate, identified that there was one property in Long Beach, California, had the name of the personal representative and the address. He did a little bit of research and found the phone number. Contacted the person that started the conversation. This guy is an only child. The house was in very poor condition, didn't really care about it. He just wanted cash because he has some issues, I think like drug issues. And only child, he didn't care, so he put the contract, put the house under contract for $30,000 and then reassigned it. Have you heard of wholesaling? Basically, he picked up out of his customers, his clients that he worked with, he selected a contractor who he knew that he would love to buy the contract in a heartbeat. Contact him, give him the information, the contractor says, yes, I do want it. And he made $56,000. So that's one strategy without having to own the house. You can actually assign contracts or wholesale contracts. And that's something that as I get older, I really like it more and more. When I was in my 20s and 30s, I wouldn't mind going and getting a sledgehammer and start knocking walls down. That was actually therapeutic for me. But as I get older, my back is not in the same shape, so now I'm like, I like to just take this piece of paper and make $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 and let somebody else do the work. And because there's plenty of inventory, so there's always opportunities coming through. All right, now let's talk about the equity and motivation. In real estate, if there is equity and a motivated seller, I'm in business. Agree? That's the ideal listing. Unless you like, do you guys remember the short sales? That was not fun. It's still there, not as many. But that was not fun. But if I have somebody with lots of equity and a motivation to sell, then that's a really good lead to go after. Well, let me show you where the equity and motivation comes within niche. Between 1946 and 1964, 78.2 million people were born. What are we talking about here? Boomers. Boomers. I love that. Boomers. Well, these guys are between, the baby boomer of today is somewhere between mid-50s to mid-60s. That's what the bulk of the generation is. They are homeowners. Most of their homes are paid for. Think about it. These kids were the offspring of the people that went through the Great Depression. So what were the parents teaching these kids right from birth? You save your money, you buy a house, you pay your house off, and you pay your bills on time, you don't get into debt, and if you have some cash, buy real estate. Because they taught these kids that real estate was the most safer investment you can do with your money. And they said, don't put it in the bank, because their parent lost their wealth through the biggest bank failure in history.
So now you have this generation growing up with this